Okay, well, welcome everyone. Glad to see you at the INE meeting this month. We have a couple items on the agenda. So first, let's take a roll call. Do we need to do that through you or not? I can't remember.
Usually for the subcommittee, I just mark people down as they show up.
Okay. And do we have to do the adoption of the agenda? No?
Not formally. No. If it looks good, we can go.
Okay.
But you have to read the notice before the meeting though, Barb.
I've got the notice right here.
Okay.
This meeting may involve the remote participation by members either by telephone or by electronic means due to the local public health emergency novel coronavirus pandemic pursuant to the provisions of Minnesota statute section 13D.021. So let's get off and start. We have Forest Party with the near north side across the school. And that's where we begin.
I'm going to try to share my screen. Hey y'all, how are you doing?
Good.
Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, this is Near North Safe Routes to School. It's a 2022 project, and it's from 16th Avenue North from Queen to Aldrich in Near North. Project staff is myself as transportation planner, and then Nathan Kemmer is also with us tonight. He's the project engineer. Like I said, it's a 2022 construction project. Right now in spring, fall, winter and spring of 21, we'll be doing concept design and preliminary engagement, and then doing final design later this year. So hopefully get to a 2022 construction start date. The existing condition along 16th Avenue is primarily residential in nature with some parks and schools along it. It does see quite a bit of school bus traffic on school days. And then other areas of the street are less parked up and more open near the park. Primary goals for the project are to improve safety for the most vulnerable users of the street, to connect the 3 schools and 3 parks that are there, to address safety on a documented PED crash concentration corridor, and to fulfill city goals for complete streets, Vision Zero, all ages and abilities bikeways, and transportation equity measures. And of course, you all are familiar with some of our guiding policies, such as Vision Zero, the Transportation Action Plan, and Complete Streets that help inform our concept design. The Safe Routes to School map, which was first initiated in 2014, it also indicates this as a walking route for youth from 16th North between Queen and Aldrich. And then the All Ages and Abilities Bikeway also has this indicated as a AAA bikeway network. And the PED crash concentration corridor map shows this as one of those corridors as well, at least to the west of North Commons Park. And digging in a little bit deeper on those PED crash numbers, there's 4 PED crashes in a study period from 2011 to 2015. There was 1 bike crash on the corridor in that same time frame. And then there were 47 motor vehicle crashes, 38% of those were injury crashes in the same time frame. And that's how we end up with a PED crash concentration corridor. I just want to touch on some of the bike boulevard treatments that we usually utilize on a AAA bike network. Bike boulevards are striped facilities that they're shared with motor vehicles. So motor vehicles are allowed to drive and park on bike boulevards for the most part. Speed humps are used to keep those vehicle speeds well below the posted speed limit, which is now 20 miles an hour in residential streets in Minneapolis. Many traffic circles are used to slow those vehicle speeds at intersections, and usually those are done in sequential order, one block after the other, to have a calming effect along the corridor. Chicanes can be used too as a built device in a mid-block to actually jog the street center line and curb line. And then traffic diversion is sometimes used to lower vehicle volumes or deter traffic from using the street in general. And all of these things have great impact on not only bicycle safety, but also pedestrian safety as well, by lowering vehicle speeds and reducing traffic along the primary route. Here's a couple examples of pedestrian crossing devices that are also used to do double duty on bike boulevards for bicycle crossings on the main streets. So shelter medians and rapid flash beacons help deliver people across major streets. And now I'm going to talk about some of the preliminary concepts that we have developed. We have 3 concepts. All of these seek to slow vehicle speeds and make 16th Avenue more suitable to walking and biking. These ideas will be further vetted for suitability and access, as well as public engagement feedback from an upcoming meeting we have next week, our open house, virtual open house. And then the final concept design later this spring would be a hybrid of all 3 of these concepts rather than strictly one of these concepts. So this is just showing existing conditions, showing stop sign locations, and there's quite a bit of stops along the corridor, which on bike boulevards we typically try to remove and replace with addition like traffic circles or a different type of traffic calming device than stop signs. And this is what concept A looks like, showing a couple of traffic circles near the center of the project, and then showing curb extensions at several locations as well. And I'm just going to touch on these briefly. Concept B has speed humps near North Commons Park, where we see less traffic or less parking and more wide open spaces near North Commons, and North High as well, which is across the street. It also uses traffic circles, and then also initiates a rapid flash beacon at Fremont Avenue to help people across the street there. And then concept C kind of takes some of these same ideas along the outer fringes, but then along North Commons Park, where it's connected with North High School, there's a landscaped connection that diverts traffic and really would take the form of more like a trail-like facility between Knox and James. So vehicles wouldn't be able to use 16th Avenue in that 1 block stretch. They would have to detour and use another facility. But bicycles would be able to pass through, and of course pedestrians would be able to pass through as well. So that's kind of the big idea for this concept C. There's also landscape curb extensions throughout the project as well on concept C. So right now we have an online survey up. It's more of an existing condition survey, but on February 23rd, we'll be switching that out to a survey of the 3 concepts that you see here. You can make comments on the map of the 3 concepts. And so if you can access the project website to gain access to either of those online surveys. The first one will be up through February 23rd, and then it will be replaced by the concept level survey. Things that we're hearing back from those surveys, reports of really high vehicle speeds, like well over the residential posted speed limit. on certain segments of 16th Avenue North and some of the cross streets, and a general support for traffic calming elements in the neighborhood. And again, I mentioned the upcoming online open house, which is on February 24th from 6 to 7:30. You can find a link to access that open house on the project website. And thanks. I'll take any questions you have.
Will you be wanting a resolution from us, Forrest, for this project right now, or you'll be coming back, I'm assuming?
Well, this is the second visit, so I would hope to get a resolution today unless there's a need to come back at a later date.
Okay.
Hi, Forrest. Oh, sorry. Hi, Forrest. Got a couple questions.
Yes.
You talked about the speeds on the street. So the speed limit is 20 miles an hour on the street based on the citywide residential speed limit?
That's right.
Okay. And then, I know you've just implemented the citywide speed limit, and you're not signing that 20 mile an hour just at the kind of entry points into the city.
That's right.
So have you looked at all at putting speed limit signs up on streets where you do see some speeding problems to remind folks that the speed limit's 20 miles an hour?
Yeah, that's a good idea. I'd have to take that back to our Vision Zero folks and our traffic folks, see if we could do some spot signing as part of this.
Okay. And then also, do you know what the average daily traffic count is on 16th?
We don't have an accurate count. We have some intersection counts, like hourly counts, that indicate that it's pretty low. I would imagine it would be less than 1,000 vehicles a day.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just curious if you put that diverter in, like you show in concept C, what kind of traffic would get diverted off of 16th onto adjoining neighborhood streets.
Yeah, certainly.
Okay.
I don't know.
I just have a question. Just mainly curiosity. Can you talk a little bit about the funding, like where it comes from? Is there federal money in this because of the safe streets routes to school? And then also, do you have an idea that if your professional judgment is such that I want roundabouts on every intersection, is there the financial resources to make that happen, or do you have to trim back the wish list? I just kind of want to get a grasp of the money aspect of it.
Yeah, certainly. This is a federal aid project, so the majority of the funding would be coming from federal sources. The rest of it would be coming from our Safe Routes to School Capital Fund. We are going to have to do a little bit of, I'd say it's a pretty big budget for given what it is, residential street and neighborhood traffic calming. It kind of depends on how we spend those funds. Something like that landscaped connection, that traffic diverter would be almost like a full reconstruction for a block. So that could eat up a lot of the resources and maybe have to do trimming back on other things. But we could probably go a long way with what we have on just the typical speed bumps and traffic circles and rapid flash beacons, those kind of minor cost items.
Okay, thank you.
I just have a quick follow-up on that. When you in Minneapolis, when we install traffic circles and they're planted, who maintains the plantings in the traffic circles?
That's often the question. We have a adopt a median program where we tend to try to get neighborhood support to get a group of people to maintain those, and they tend to sign waivers and stuff that they'd be out in the street, out in the median, maintaining those. But we don't have any in-house resources to maintain these.
Okay, yeah, that's similar to what we did in St. Paul, and sometimes it's tough to, initially when you put them in, you get some neighbors that are interested in maintaining and kind of leading the effort, but if they move away or move out of the neighborhood, then it's kind of tough to keep those maintained. So that's ongoing issue. I can see that.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions from,
I've got one.
okay,
Oh, go ahead, Julia.
Just knowing that this is a street that sounds like it seems scary, especially if you were sending kids along it. Have you any sense of the vehicle traffic that is associated with the school? How much of that is because people don't feel comfortable and can't imagine sending their kids to school aside from in a vehicle because of like, how much do you expect that to shift? Have you had conversations around that? Are there studies from elsewhere of what happens when you take a street like this, where it sounds like there's some particularly dangerous driving, and made it safer in terms of mode share shift that happens?
I don't have an exact percentage. We've done some surveying of North High School students and how they get around today and how they might get around on a traffic calmed 16th Avenue North. And we got pretty good feedback from them that if there were improvements out there, they would maybe adjust their behaviors. But then again, they also had things to say about personal safety and using the street. So it's not an all or nothing treatment that we're expecting out here, I guess.
Is that something that you'll be tracking to see as this project goes forward, how it does impact it, or following up with, if not those students, then kids of a similar age, to see how it changes over time for learning from in the future?
Yeah, I think that would be something that it would be warranted, following up with them at a later date and seeing how things change and behaviors change. It's a good thought.
Just for me, drafting a resolution, are there any specific elements that you would like to see reflected in the resolution?
Just reference for the traffic calming support, the traffic calming devices and support for those materials, traffic on the street in general.
So I have written, and just for everybody's, the Pedestrian Advisory Committee supports efforts to reduce vehicular speed and increase comfort for pedestrians in the Near North Safe Routes to School project. We favor the installation of the best available traffic calming devices for accomplishing these goals.
I'm wondering if we can exclude the traffic diverters from that.
What was that? I'm not naming any particular traffic calming devices, but do you have a particular reason why you don't like traffic diverters, Julia?
Yes, they shift through traffic onto our rental corridors, higher density residential corridors. So I think that the goal is best served by not prohibiting through traffic, but reducing speeds rather than forcing more pollution onto community corridors that might run parallel. And just seeing how they've worked out in like South Minneapolis, I think that they kind of are, they reinforce geographic inequity in who's exposed to air pollution, who's exposed to high-speed vehicles. So they keep the street grid from functioning to allow people to choose to go slower and funnel those onto higher. Okay, sorry, don't want to be.
No problem. I mean, I don't have any problem with including that. Does anybody feel strongly one way or the other? Because otherwise I'm okay with leaving it just kind of open.
Yeah, I think we should leave the option of the diverter in, just so the community can have more input on it. And, you know, one thing that could be done is if the diverter is installed, you know, the city could do a study to determine where that, 1,000 cars a day, what streets of those cars are going to be diverted to. And then the community can make a more educated decision on whether they want the diverter or not.
Based on how that functions, like I'm in an area that has traffic diversion that's happening based on one-ways and turn restrictions. And the community that speaks is the people who own homes on the side streets, the quote unquote residential corridors, and it's renters who pay the cost of it, who are along the quote unquote arterials. So I appreciate the goals of this, but I worry that that particular tool to achieve the goals is reinforces inequity, and leaving it to community. We don't actually have systems for making sure that things are equitable within Minneapolis. So it just doesn't seem like an appropriate tool to me to have as one of the options. And maybe it's a separate discussion that we have later and we just don't mention it one way or the other in this, but I would like to talk through that issue on the PAC at some point, if it's
Okay.
more controversial than for today.
I just don't have I mean, I haven't thought about the issue that much, so I don't have a strong feeling about it. Would this be something that would be good to talk about at like a PNP meeting?
Yeah, I can put it on that list, or I mean, I just saw that we only have the two topics for today, so I thought I wouldn't have brought it up if we had a packed agenda. So
I like that we have 2 items on the agenda.
I just don't know if I put in the packet. I'm alarmed to see it being considered a tool within the city's traffic calming.
I would like to make a suggestion. I think we should adopt what Aaron has drafted and then place an agenda item to discuss this more fully, so everyone's kind of aware that if they want to weigh in on it and think about it a bit. I think that might be the best way to handle it going forward. Julie, I agree with you that we should put it on as an agenda item, and then I'd leave it to people to decide whether it's PNP or INE.
I endorse that approach too.
Okay, I do too. I think that's.
And actually, since Forrest is here, I think it might be a good to revisit a similar treatment that he worked on years ago, which was a test closure of a street in Ward 2 in Seward neighborhood, which is very similar in the project. And he did evaluation on it and kind of looked at where traffic went, and I don't know, we should look at the results, because and maybe I'll wait for the PNP conversation, but this conversation makes me kind of nervous. And I don't know that I agree with some of the points that, that I've heard so far, and always happy to wrestle with those issues. But anyway, I think my main point that I was bringing up was we should look at some of the other study that we've done on these type of treatments.
Have we looked at it from the perspective of population density and air quality equity across, like at a street level? Because I don't see the city as having much data or information and being primarily responsive to property owners. So
let's save that. That's a good question for the broader conversation.
And Julie, I'm
Aaron, we can't understand you. It's breaking up.
reflecting your comments in the minutes. So, I mean, I'm sorry. I was just saying that, I don't know if you can hear me now either.
We
but,
can.
That Julia's comments are going to be in the minutes, and so it will be in the record.
I appreciate that, and I just to clarify for us, this is not about this project in particular, or anything that you're presenting to us, so much as that is one of the broader city tools that has historically been used.
We'll agree that that's the resolution that you created, Aaron, is the one that we'll give to Forrest for this project. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I second the motion if Aaron's reading of it was a motion moving the matter.
Good. All right. Anything else, or otherwise I'm going to move us to the next agenda item. Okay, thank you very much, Forrest. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Should we technically just take a vote to memorialize in the minutes that the motion carried?
We typically don't do that.
We don't need to do
We
that.
don't ever do that on subcommittees? Okay.
Okay. Let's move on to Amy Morgan with the Lasalle 14th and 14th Street West. It's intersection, I think. Thanks for being here, Amy.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Amy Morgan, Associate Transportation Planner with our Transportation Planning and Programming Division. Nathan Kemmer is also on this call, and he's the project engineer for this project specifically. So zoom in a little closer here. So this project is looking to do pedestrian safety improvements at the intersection of LaSalle and West 14th Street in the Loring Park neighborhood. We have heard from both the council member and community members that this is a really important and high priority intersection that needs safety improvements. So we had the opportunity to move this up in our CIP by a couple of years. And so we are working to get this implemented this year. For those who may not be as familiar with the area, LaSalle is a 2-lane, one-way southbound roadway. Again, 2 lanes with a bike lane and 2 parking lanes. There's also a number of uses that are surrounding there that create a lot of pedestrian traffic as well as bikes and motor vehicles. You have Emerson School, you have a number of multifamily residential buildings, a number of businesses right there near that intersection. And so there's a lot of uses that create demand for a safer crossing at this intersection. If you look towards the daily users, there's just about 1,500 pedestrians that use this intersection every day, about 400 cyclists and about 5,600 vehicles. So there's a lot of people using this intersection in many different modes, which can cause some safety issues at this intersection, which we have seen and heard from community members. Looking at the reported crashes over the last 3 years, there's been a total of 29 crashes at this intersection, over a quarter of which have resulted in injury. So both the data and, again, community members are telling us that there's a safety problem here, and we're looking to address that with this project. So the goal of this project, just to kind of summarize, is really to improve and enhance the comfort and predictability of the intersection for all users. Doing that by reducing the crossing distance for pedestrians, improving the sight lines, upgrading the curb ramps to be ADA compliant, really just making it a more comfortable intersection for everyone, and most specifically for pedestrians. As I mentioned, this project was able to move up in the CIP by a couple of years. So we are starting this project a little bit later than we typically would on a capital project. We are in the early stages of doing data collection and early concept development, beginning to reach out to stakeholders near this intersection to hear their input and kind of bring those initial ideas out to them. Our goal is to have a 30% design in the next couple of weeks, with the ability to then go into more detailed engineering with a hopeful late summer, fall construction. So currently, as this roadway exists, a little too far there. To cross LaSalle here, it's about 40 feet curb to curb. 14th is 31 feet on the west and 36 feet curb to curb on the east side of that. And so really the goal is to narrow that crossing distance as much as possible. And so we are looking at proposing curb extensions at each of the corners to tighten up that crossing distance as much as possible. On here, we're looking at 7-foot curb extensions on that western side. It would be 5-foot curb extensions on that eastern side. Really, this is due to trying not to have any lane shift. Just helps with safety and really just trying to decrease it where possible. So with the curb ramps, we'll also be looking to upgrade and install new ADA ramps at every corner. We're also looking at potential green infrastructure or greening at each of these, or where possible at this intersection. So that is all I have for you guys, but I would love to open it up for any questions or thoughts that you might have.
I have a couple of comments.
Yep.
Looking at the proposed revision, particularly on the north side of the intersection, it looks like they're still maintaining the two parking lanes, and they go quite a bit south. That, I think, is the most dangerous thing about that intersection, both from a pedestrian, bicyclist, and a motor vehicle point of view, is that people crossing 14th or attempting to cross it's a death trap, because the cars park so close to the intersection that you actually have to enter the intersection quite a ways in order to get a view northbound on Lasalle. I think, I know that what Lakes and Legends is there, and it'd be the northwest quadrant. I don't know if they're wedded to those parking spots, but it seems like backing up the proposed parking by at least two vehicles gives a fighting chance for a pedestrian to cross, or a motor vehicle crossing 14th. That the sight lines are so poor there, and the speeds are so fast on LaSalle going south that I just think you can't make it more safe without addressing parking on the north side of the intersection.
So just so I can make sure I'm understanding you clearly, you're talking about on this northern side having that extend further north. Is that?
Yeah, stop parking anywhere close to the intersection as people are coming by, because a car, trying to cross east-west on 14th has to go out so far in order to see if cars are coming, and by that time, less optimal things can happen. And it's the same thing, I think, with bicyclists, particularly trying to cross on 14th, and of course Emerson School's right there, so that's to be expected that there will be cyclists and that kind of thing. I just think pushing the parking back at least a couple of spots to open up the sight lines a bit is warranted.
Yep. So you may be familiar with this. Back in, I believe it was 2018, there was a push from the community to pull back those parking spaces. So they are currently 30 feet from the intersection. We don't have the exact dimensions of what length these would be. There's still some of that survey work that needs to be done to truly understand what can work there. But it is a definite balance, obviously, with safety, but we know that this is a very high demand parking area as well. So just trying to be respectful of that for the businesses, but also prioritizing pedestrian safety here. So appreciate that comment.
Yeah, and 30 feet is nowhere near enough, because let's say an SUV parks in the closest to the spot intersection, that's probably 18 feet. It's one vehicle parking there can just obscure the sight lines of anyone crossing east-west and 14th. I think 30 feet is really nominal at best. I live in Loring Park, and so I know that intersection very, very well. And yeah, parking is at a premium in some parts of that, but I think the balance tips on the safety by even removing 2 parking spots or 3 parking spots. I think the payoff would be worth it. So thank you.
Thanks.
Are there no plans for doing something that is more protected for the bike lane?
Do you mean for the bikeway? It is not in the new transportation action plan. It's identified as a connector route. It's not identified as a AAA network. So as for now, there's no plans for any improvements to that. And
do you know what you may have said this, and I'm a little foggy-headed today, so I apologize if I'm asking you to repeat yourself, but what are the speeds and what are the bike volumes along here? It is so miserable to cross that it just feels like it would be so intimidating to be biking with vehicles.
Yep. So we don't have a speed study done on this. We typically would, but given the fact that this project moved up, we can't do speed, can't get speeds during winter. And so we don't have the actual data for that. It is a 25 posted speed limit on this roadway. The data that we do have for bicycle counts is about 380. I believe that's from 2017 data.
I'm curious, I think 2 things. One is, this seems like the kind of one way that's just, that being a one way makes particularly dangerous. And I'm wondering if the city is still kind of trying to turn dangerous one ways back into two ways so that it's safer. And I'm also curious if there's any way of doing essentially like behind the curb bike lane thing to get the pedestrian curb further and reduce the crossing distance by another 6 feet, or anything that can continue to narrow that given how fast vehicles go, and maybe find more creative solutions since it's not up for being a protected bike lane.
Yep. So with this project, we're not looking at changing this from a one-way to a two-way. As far as I know, that has not been a discussion on this street. As for the bikeway, that is a question that got brought up actually the other day. And it's something that I'm going to bring back to our project team to see if it's feasible to bring it behind the curb. Kind of given the timeline of this project and the fact that this is not on a AAA network, I'm not sure where that will go, but I'm definitely open to exploring that option and seeing what's possible there.
And I'm suggesting it not from what level of bike network it is, but purely from a pedestrian perspective, especially given that there's parking and the bike lane may be obscured. The further out we can get in order to see if it's safe to cross, the better. So being able to flip where we're standing with where the bike lane is seems like it has clear pedestrian benefits.
Yep, thank you.
I'm assuming since you want the final design to be done in 2 weeks, you won't be coming back to the PAC. Is that correct, Amy?
No, we do not have plans to come back at this time.
So would you like a resolution from us today?
If possible, that would be great, yes.
Okay.
I have one more question. Do you plan on putting in any marked crosswalks in as part of the project?
As for now, there is a question into our traffic folks just to confirm this, but from my understanding, this intersection does not meet the criteria to install a marked crosswalk, just since it is unsignalized. We are kind of looking at this as a incremental approach, which I think is pretty typical for our projects. And so really the goal here, narrowing that roadway, increasing the safety by the geometry of the intersection, with the intent to continue to evaluate this. And if we're seeing continued safety concerns, then looking at what are some next options of putting in a crosswalk or what have you.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have, Aaron, are you doing a resolution or should we do that after?
So I could just tell you what I have so far, and you could tell me what you'd like me to add, especially looking for input from people who are familiar with this intersection. I said the Pedestrian Advisory Committee supports efforts to reduce crossing distances at Lasalle Avenue and West 14th Street. We asked that parking be taken further than 30 feet from the intersection. Anything else that you'd like me to add?
I'd like it to ask the city to explore, I guess, behind the curb bike lane. I don't know quite what that would be called. I haven't seen it done, but usually it seems whatever it would be where we extend the bump out and then sort of like a floating bus stop, but it's like a floating curb across the street.
I think it would be considered a protected intersection.
Yeah.
What? Intersection? I didn't catch that. I'm sorry.
Protected intersection.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Thank you.
So we asked the city to explore a curb protected intersection for the bike lane to further narrow crossing distance.
Aaron, could you read the entirety of the proposed language again, please?
Yes. The Pedestrian Advisory Committee supports efforts to reduce crossing distances at Lasalle Avenue and West 14th Street. We ask that parking be taken further than 30 feet from the intersection. We ask the city to explore a curb protected intersection for the bike lane to further narrow crossing distance.
And I would perhaps we consider adding a final sentence to it, just saying that Opening and maintaining sight lines is vital to the safety for all modes of user for this intersection.
I will put that sentence after the parking sentence, just so
Sounds
it's clearly
good.
tied.
Thank you.
Aaron.
And I will email the resolution out again to the executive committee when I'm done writing.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments for Amy before we?
I'm just curious if there's anything that maybe can be done in tangent with this, like under the bridge, to remind people to be looking out for people walking or anything like that. It seems like something about that going under the Loring Greenway just makes people forget that they're going to be, makes drivers forget that there's going to be people nearby. And if, yeah, other cues for drivers to be slower would
You're
be
looking for signage, Julie?
I mean, I'm not sure what it could be, but that space is so desolate and kind of feels like a highway thing. And I feel like that's part of, there's like a mindset shift that is maybe happening through there. There's something about it that feels inhuman. And then all of a sudden there's people again, and drivers are already flooring it. So whatever additional cues ahead might alert drivers. Don't forget, you're still in a city.
So we don't have that as part of this project. Realistically, that's outside the scope of this, but I think it is a valid point, just having those, some sort of reminder for people driving, whatever it may be. But I think as we start doing infrastructure like this, I think it helps provide that understanding that we are, this is a pedestrian environment, trying to narrow that visually for drivers to help improve that safety. But
yeah, this is
appreciate that comment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, great. Well, thank you, Amy. We appreciate it, the presentation.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Well, it's 5:13.
Not
Well
too
done,
bad.
everybody.
That's unusual for I&E.
Oh, next month will make up for it.
Oh, we will, I'm sure. Okay.
Be a big month. I think Hennepin Avenue will be here.
Oh, goody. All right. Are there any announcements, or anybody have anything they want to share before we close this meeting?
I don't think so.
Okay, glad to see Matt and I saw somebody else, one of the new members here, but anyway, glad to have you here. Glad to see you coming to the I&E meeting. Thanks, Matt.
Yes, thank you.
All right.
Bye, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.
Take care.
Good evening.
Night, everyone.
Bye.